Sarah,
Okay, I have your slides. Do you want the slides?
do you have slides? Okay.
Yes. All right.
Yes, please.
Let me start the session. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Climb Your Everest workshop. This is the December 20th. Actually, this is the longest night of the year here in California. And probably for you guys, it's Saturday morning. Welcome to this session. Last week I was in Nepal in 4 different cities, and we have 78 people here. Thank you all. Welcome. Thank you for being here. This is the beginning of the new cohort of classes. So you need to come to the Saturday sessions, plus watching the videos, and plus coming to the in-person workshop when I'm in Nepal to be able to complete your 6 month session, and then you can get a certificate. The whole goal is at the end of the 6 months, everybody is learning leadership skills so that you can benefit yourself, your students, and kind of we can improve ourselves as we are learning these skills together. Okay, so for today, because I invited Alyssa, she's on the board of Climb Your Everest organization, and she's been in Nepal with me before. And I'm hoping she's planning to join very soon when her kids are a little older. Um, a lot of you in the past few workshops, in the past few times that I've been in Nepal, asked me a lot of questions about mental health. So I invite an expert, a person who knows a lot more than me about mental health. Please mute yourself if you haven't, because we want to focus on the topic. We don't want to distract anybody else. I really appreciate it. So we created a presentation for you, but I want you to feel free to ask your questions. Some of you already asked me questions about depression, anxiety, and how to help your student, how to normalize uh, getting help in Nepal, and how this is a taboo for you to get help. So we want to talk about all of it. So this is informal session. It is not, this is a workshop. So I want you to unmute yourself and ask questions at any point, but we have a little lecture part, and then we'll make it Q&A. Okay. So give me a second for me to open the presentation. Well, Alyssa, do you want to start by introducing yourself while I'm downloading the presentation?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa Tice. So, as Sarah mentioned, I work as a mental health professional in California. So, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I work in a group therapy practice in San Diego, if you know where that is. And I work with lots of different type of people. I specialize personally in working with people that are pregnant and have just given birth, but I work with lots of different kinds of people as well. Also, as Sarah mentioned, I have been to Nepal. That's where she and I met. I came in 2015, and I've been working on the board of Climb Your Everest since we started it. And I'm really excited just to be able to chat with you today. As Sarah mentioned, it's really valuable for you if, as I'm speaking, if you have questions, and then we will have time at the end. This is not a therapy session in any way, and this is just the beginning of the conversation. So I'm certain that this is just going to create more questions, and that's good. And there's lots more discussion that can be had. It's just that this is a big topic, a complicated subject. We're probably not going to cover everything about it today, but I want to see what we can get through and see what questions we can help get answered so that we can kind of start this conversation.
All right, I'm sharing. Can you see the slides?
Yes, can you just do it in present, like the slideshow or presentation mode?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to start, we just want to define what is mental health so that we are all on the same page and understand what this is. So, a technical definition is that mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So emotional are the feelings that we experience, the emotions that we have. Psychological are our thoughts and kind of concepts, things that we believe in. And social is our relationship to other people and kind of how we see ourselves in the world around us. So our mental health influences how we feel, think, and behave or act, including how we make choices in our lives. So it's an incredibly important part of our overall wellness, our overall well-being. Um, Another definition, mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. So I know there was questions about mental illness. So mental health is a concept with regards to when it's going well, right? Like just like physical illness as opposed to physical health. Okay. So there are different factors that influence every one of our mental health. And that doesn't matter if you live in California like us or if you're in Nepal. We're all human beings. There are different factors that affect our overall mental well-being. So as you can see in the Venn diagram, one kind of arena is our biology. So this can include our physical health, right? Do we have an illness? Are we sick with something? How can we use our bodies? Genetic vulnerabilities. So when we are born into a family, sometimes the parents that gave birth to us or their parents before them, they may have been dealing with some kind of a mental health issue, whether or not that was given a name. Especially, I know in Nepal, as you guys are mentioning, there's a huge stigma against talking about mental health and mental illness. So it is probably not too unlikely that, for a lot of generations before, there has not been a name of depression or anxiety or PTSD. And in fact, it's a lot more prevalent now that we're talking about these things, but that doesn't mean that those issues didn't exist then. They maybe just weren't named or diagnosed, right? So certain people might be more vulnerable or predisposed to developing a mental health issue based on their genetics and their lineage. Another factor is drug effects. So someone was also asking questions about medications, right? So there are certain medications. I'm not a medication prescriber, so I'm not going to be able to answer a ton of questions about that because I don't prescribe medication. But what we do know is that there are medications that people do take that do affect their kind of biological makeup, essentially, to help manage mental health issues. So that's kind of the biological sphere. Social, so this can look like your peers. Who are the people that are around you? Who are your friends, your family members, your family circumstances? So, what kind of a family are you born into? Is your family have money? Do you not have money? Kind of what your social status is of the family that you're born into. These are huge factors that can influence your mental health. And then psychological. So this can also include your physical health, but this can just kind of be in terms of like how you think about your physical health, what you consider your physical health to be. These can include coping skills, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but coping skills are things that we can do to cope with challenges. These are skills and actions, steps that we could take to help us deal with challenges that we face. And then social skills. So social skills are a huge kind of area of our life that affects our mental health. Do we feel like we are confident? I know many of you are teachers, so you have to have a lot of different kinds of social skills to be an effective educator in order to stand in front of a room to teach effectively so that students will learn. Family relationships. So what is the quality of your family relationships? How do they affect you psychologically? Your self-esteem. So this is how you feel about yourself. And then again, overall, just mental health. What do you believe about mental health? So these are all just, and these are not the only factors that influence your mental health, but these are just some of them. Okay. So like we said, there are mental health issues. So we can have our mental health very well intact when we feel like we're healthy, we're doing well. Just like your physical health, when you're feeling good, you're not sick, And then there are other issues that we consider to be either mental health issues or illnesses. So there is a question about the difference between depression and anxiety. So these are common, and these are not the only mental health issues at all. These are just some general common ones, okay? So depression, and I'm basing this off of how we talk about this in the US, okay? So I don't know in Nepal exactly if you go to see a psychologist, the exact kind of what we call criteria that they use to diagnose, I'm unsure. I'm only aware of in the US right now. So for depression, we look at this is considered a mood disorder, which means that there is something going on with your mood that hasn't been going on before. So you might enter an episode of depression, and this happens for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes, as I mentioned, genetically in your family, this is more common. Your brain just might be more likely to go into a depression if you experience certain events. You can experience a traumatic event, for example, which is something very scary or something very stressful and life-threatening. That can cause a depression. So your mood is going to get low. You're going to see different symptoms. So it is different for different people. So it also depends on sometimes factors like gender and age. You will see differences with how someone who is older, who is an older generation, like kind of shows their depression versus someone who's younger. Likewise with someone who's female versus male. But you're going to have a low mood. Often you have difficulty concentrating, very low motivation, very just kind of slow moving, or it can feel like you almost feel nothing. It's like there's a absence of feeling. Nothing brings you joy. You can also experience suicidal thoughts. So these are sometimes when people are experiencing a depressive episode, is what we call it. They can experience suicidal thoughts, though not always. That does not always happen when someone is depressed. So it's very important to ask questions about that to see, is that something they're experiencing or not? Because that is not always what's happening when someone is depressed. Now, anxiety, on the other hand, this is a disorder in which oftentimes you find that you're having a lot of worried thoughts. So what we would consider to be excessive. It's very normal to be worried sometimes. We all get worried sometimes because sometimes things are scary, and it's normal to worry. But anxiety comes often in different forms, but it can be your mind can't stop thinking, you cannot stop worrying, you find that you can't sleep, you find that you are your brain is kind of going into lots of different, like, what if this happens, what if this happens, what if this happens, and it's very, very difficult to control. And this goes on for a long time, for months and months, is once we start to consider, like, this is an issue now. For a lot of people, like I said, it can affect your appetite, it can affect your sleep. It can also show up in your body. So it can be really, really hard to relax. It can be very hard to sit still.
Can you mute?
People maybe.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if you can mute, remember to please mute yourself just so we can get through this part. But so it can be, anxiety can just be very, it can be very present often. It can be very difficult to sleep, like I said. So it can show up as thoughts, but it can also show up in your body. And you can also have what we call panic. So panic attacks, if you've heard of this, or anxiety attacks. So these are episodes or periods where you're very, very anxious. Sometimes people feel they can't breathe. They're so scared. It's always important to go to a doctor to make sure you're not having a medical event. But this can be present with anxiety. But again, not always. Not everybody with anxiety gets panic attacks. Sometimes that happens and sometimes that doesn't.
A few people asked me about panic attack last week when I was on the call. So.
Okay. Yeah. So they're very common and they're very scary. So it can be really important to know the signs. If you have access to the internet, so it's a good idea to look up common symptoms of panic attacks, because they are different for everybody. So some people, they experience it in their stomach. Some people, it feels like it's in your chest. Other people, it feels like it's in your head. It's very different. And like I said, it's very important to go to a doctor to rule out anything physical, because sometimes certain health issues look exactly like a panic attack. That's also why a panic attack is very scary and very common for people to worry I'm dying. I'm scared I'm going to die. This feels like I'm dying. So you do want to go to a doctor and make sure that you're okay. But if it does turn out that it's panic, it's important to be able to start to become aware of that, know what the signs and symptoms are, and then work on some strategies to help with that. Okay, and then trauma and stressor related disorders, if you have ever heard of PTSD. So this is the most common one. Our most well-known one is PTSD. So this is when, again, a trauma happens. So something that is very big, something that's very scary. Oftentimes it's very life-threatening. It's an event that you know this was a trauma. This was a very big event in my life. When it's PTSD, there are certain symptoms that you experience. People have nightmares. People can't stop thinking about it. People also try to avoid thinking about it. They get very strong reactions anytime that they're reminded of what happened. There's a lot of various different symptoms, but this is specifically tied to some kind of a big event that happened. A lot of PTSD and other trauma-related symptoms can look a lot like anxiety. And in fact, anxiety and depression can also develop after a trauma. An adjustment disorder. So this is when something in our life happens, but it can be hard to get used to it, hard to adjust to it. And we're having a little bit more of a harder time than we normally would. Say that we move somewhere or a relationship ends, and the normal kind of period of time where we would normally say, you know what, that was hard for me, but I've moved on. We find I'm not moving on. My brain is stuck there, or I'm feeling depressed, and it's related to this. It's not as severe as I am fully depressed. It's not as severe as PTSD, but it is more than just kind of getting over it. So we kind of can get stuck there. So adjustment disorders can look a lot like kind of milder anxiety, depression, some trauma stuff. Perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. So this is what I work with a lot. So this is when people are pregnant, when they give birth, up to about a year after they give birth. So it's very, very, very common to be very anxious in pregnancy. But when it is a disorder is when it looks like what I talked about with anxiety. And you're anxious about the pregnancy, or after the baby, you give birth to the baby, you're very worried about something happening to the baby to where you're not sleeping, you can't eat, you're afraid to go to bed because you think, I can't sleep because something will happen to the baby. Likewise with depression, this is so give me one moment. I'm so sorry. I have to turn off my monitor. My children just went into their bed. Can you talk for just 1 second, Sarah?
Yeah, I will.
Sorry.
She has two little kids. Probably they are fighting or they are crying. That's why she had to go back and take care of the kids. So for the PK, you raised your hand. Do you have a question?
Yes, actually, I have a question. So, I encountered a very big accident in very early age, and I can't move on from that trauma. Am I out?
Say it again. Say it again.
I'm so sorry. Well, I encountered a very big accident in my early childhood, and I can't move on from that, and it's like so stressful, and I can't deal with it anymore, and I'm just so panic every time. So
Okay.
I just want to know, can I get some thing that will help me?
Okay. All right. Yes. Alyssa is back. Go ahead, Alyssa.
Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry. We have a monitor for my kids, and I forgot to turn it off. So they were being very loud. Yes. So exactly what you're describing. It sounds like it's, without knowing any more, I can't say this is what this is, but that sounds like there was a trauma, and it's very, very normal. It's very common for us to develop things later. If we don't talk about it, if we don't work with a professional, if we aren't able to figure out what's going on, it's common that it's not going to go away. So it can be really valuable to see if you can connect with anybody, to look this up, look up just trauma online, see what, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But I know that there's not much resources in Nepal right now, but it starts with just naming, I think that this was a trauma. And then understanding it's very normal and very common for us as humans. We're going to react to that. A trauma is a really horrible, scary thing that happened. It shouldn't have happened. And our brain is trying to make sense of what happened. And that's why we get stuck there. So in the US, we have therapy. There is medication. You can see a psychologist. You could talk to a psychiatrist. But you don't just have to do that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the different areas in just a second that you can also kind of look at. But thank you for your question. And then, yes, so as I said, there's just a lot of things that can happen during pregnancy and after pregnancy that are very normal, or very common, but also are mental health issues. And then behavioral disorders. So these can be things that change the way that people act. You may see this a lot as teachers with students with really, really huge behavioral issues in the classroom. Oftentimes, it could be something like ADHD, where they can't stay seated, they can't focus their attention. There's lots of other different things like that, but it's just a broad kind of overview of some common issues.
Are we next slide or not yet?
Yeah. Okay, so these are myths or facts. So if you can in the chat, just type. We accidentally gave away the first one. So we want to see, what do you think, are these myths or facts? So people with mental health issues are crazy. So as you can see, that is a myth. What do we think? Seeking support for your mental health makes you weak. Do you think that that is a myth or a fact? If you could type in the chat. Okay. Yes, so I see some responses coming in. So yes, that is a myth. So seeking support for your mental health does not make you weak. It's what you need to do to manage your mental health. Just like if you are physically sick, you go to a doctor or a healer, you do something to feel better. It doesn't make you weak at all. So you can click that, Sarah, and it'll show myth.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one, mental health issues aren't real. What do you think? Do we think that's a myth or fact? Yes, that is a myth as well. They're very real. So this speaks to the part of, again, what someone mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of stigma against talking about mental health. So there are a lot of things that get in the way of people admitting that something is going on with me, that I'm not doing well. But that doesn't mean that it's not there. That doesn't mean that it's not real. Okay. Mental health problems are rare. What do you think? Do we think that is a myth or a fact that they're rare? Okay. Yeah, so that is a myth. Mental health issues are very common. Again, it just depends on if they're acknowledged or not. Sometimes they're not always given a name, but just because they're not given a name or diagnosed, that doesn't mean that they're not real and that they're not happening. And it's very, very common for people to have anxiety, people to have depression, these other issues. What do you think about this one, that people with mental health issues are all violent? Do you think that's a myth or a fact? Yeah, that's a myth. So people rarely can be violent. That is not the common issue. That is not mostly what happens. If you watch movies about people with mental health issues, shows, things like that, they often show people with mental health issues being very violent, very aggressive, very scary. But that is how movies get your attention. That's how they keep you engaged. That is not actually the reality. Most people with mental health issues are not violent. And then this last one, I have to manage my mental health all on my own. Is that a myth or a fact? So that is a myth. But for some of us, it's also going to depend on your support in your community to feel like if you do actually have to manage that on your own or not. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is what I was talking about. So there are different ways to care for your mental health. So think of all the different areas that are listed here. So personal, professional, physical, social, spiritual, emotional, psychological, and cultural, right? So you want to look at personally, so you as an individual, ask yourself, how am I really doing? That doesn't mean you have to tell anybody. If you're not ready for that, if you don't feel that you have safe people to do that with, you don't have to tell anybody, but you can check in with yourself and ask yourself, how am I really doing right now? And just because maybe you don't know if you have depression or anxiety, maybe it's not a full-blown mental health issue, but it can be important to just kind of check in from time to time and see, how am I really doing here? And what do I need? What do I like as a person? What do I enjoy doing? Because me, Alyssa, the things that I like to do, some of the things that I like to do, Sarah likes to do, but not everything. We have different interests. We have some same interests and some different ones. And just like with all of you, all right, I can't tell you what you need to do, what's fun to do. You get to decide that. You like what you like. So you want to figure out, what do I like to do? And how much am I actually doing that right now? Do I get to do the things that I love to do that bring me joy, that make me feel fulfilled? Professionally, you can look at, am I achieving my goals? Am I feeling like whatever it is that I want to be doing, if I have a professional life, am I working on that? Is that moving forward? Do I feel accomplished? Are there things that I can be moving forward with to feel better about, feel more confident in my professional life? Physical. So this means checking in with your physical health. Do you exercise ever? Do you drink enough water? Do you eat healthy foods? Are you taking care of your body? If you have medical issues, are you getting that taken care of as best as you can in whatever way fits for you? Are you able to do any of these things? If you're not doing them and you do have the opportunity, then that's a way that you can care for your mental health, even if you don't have access to a psychologist or a therapist. There are a lot of benefits to going for a walk, walking down the road to a neighbor, things like that. And so social. How connected are you to your community and to your friends, to your families? If you're living in the city far away from where you grew up, you might feel very disconnected from the people that you know, and that's going to affect your mood. That's going to affect your mental health. So it can be very important to make friends, to make connections with colleagues or coworkers, things like that. Spirituality. So this doesn't always mean religion, but it can. So if you're religious, are you connected with your religious affiliation? And also just in general, your beliefs, any belief system that you have, whether or not it's religious, as well as your values. What are the things that you value in your life? And are you feeling connected to those? It can be really important to feel connected to that in order to feel like your mental health is cared for. And then emotionally, so this is where, for a lot of folks, like talking to people that you trust can be very helpful to get feelings of care, to get feelings of like just closeness with people so that you can feel better to care for your emotional needs. And likewise, psychological. So you can think about how you talk to yourself. The way that we talk to ourselves affects how we feel. And how we feel affects the things that we do. So if I'm saying mean things to myself, if I'm saying you're not good enough, you're never going to be good enough, then I'm going to feel bad and I'm going to feel down. And when I feel bad and when I feel down, I'm not in the mood to go for a walk. I'm not in the mood to go see a friend. I'm not in the mood to cook a meal that I know is good for me. And so that makes things worse. So we can look at, how am I talking to myself? What are the things I say to myself? Can I find ways of talking to myself that are better and more helpful for me, that make me feel better? And then cultural. Do I have access? Am I connected with really important parts of who I feel like I am? My culture. There's lots of different kinds of people in Nepal. For example, there's lots of different kinds of people in the US. So there's lots of different cultures, and even within Nepal, right? Like feeling connected to your culture can look very different, or just your culture can look different depending on where you live and what region you're in. even the village that you're in, depending. So I think it's important to recognize, like, what are parts of myself that are very important and how connected am I to that? All of these pieces go into caring for your mental health. And yes, if you can see someone like a psychologist, like a professional, they can do therapy. So therapy is a professional practice where someone like me, we meet together, we talk about what's going on. We work through things that have been researched, and we do things together in talking through what's going on to really help you feel better, to make it so that your thoughts can kind of calm down, your mood can lift, different things like that. You can process maybe some things that happened to you in a safe space with someone who's trained to help you do that. So that's a tool that's very helpful, as well as there is psychiatry. I don't know how much access there is there, but a psychiatrist is a medical doctor who can give medication for mental health. And so that can be also a really useful tool. So there's professional kind of people like that. There's also hotlines. So hotlines are phone numbers that you can call. You can also go on the internet. You can access things sometimes through there, just to be able to connect with someone who has training in mental health, to be able to kind of talk to you and figure out what's going on.
Next slide.
Yeah, sorry. Next slide. Okay. So tools to cope with anxiety, stress, and overwhelm. So these are some specific things that you can do to help when you're feeling very anxious, if you're feeling very stressed, and if you're feeling very overwhelmed. So the first tool is deep breathing and mindful meditation. So when we get stressed, when our body is anxious, everything speeds up. Our heart starts to beat fast. Our breathing, we breathe more quickly, and this affects our mind, it affects our body and everything. So in order to slow everything down, we want to take in nice, deep, slow breaths with your belly from your stomach, and then nice, slow breath out. So we can all even just practice one right now. If you just take in just one nice, slow, deep breath in, hold it for just a moment, and the nice, slow breath out. There are lots of meditations that you can do. You can look this up online. You can see if there are different meditations you already know of. Whatever you can do to kind of slow your body down and relax. You want to find ways to help your body relax. Another tool is practicing self-compassion. So this is kindness to yourself. So this goes into how you talk to yourself. So you want to think about, what are the things I say to myself when I'm having a bad day? If I think I made a mistake, if I'm overwhelmed, if I'm stressed, how do I talk to myself about that? And how can I be more kind next time? If I say, I will never get this right, I'm so bad at this, maybe instead next time I can say, I'm doing the best I can, and I think that that's good enough. I think I did a good job today. I'll try harder next time, but I'm proud of what I did today. That's a lot more kind, and that's going to reduce your anxiety. That's going to slow things down to help you cope. There's also journaling or reading. So you can read things from other people. You can read things written by psychologists to learn more about anxiety, to learn more about stress. And journaling is where you just write what you're thinking and feeling. So if you don't feel like I don't have anyone to talk to, or I don't want to tell anyone, I'm not ready for that. Like, that's not something that I can do, but maybe I can write that down. Maybe I can write out what I'm thinking and feeling. That can be a really helpful way to get everything out. There's also support from friends, family, and colleagues. So really, for you, seeing, who do I have in my life that I trust, that I feel safe with, that I love, that I can talk to, that can help maybe sit with me if I'm having panic. If I feel like I'm scared, who can I call? Who can I sit with and talk to? There is also, like I said, therapy and seeking professional help. If you have access to that, therapy is a really, really helpful tool. And artistic expression. Sometimes we can't think of the words to write to express ourselves, but maybe we can draw it, or we can sing it, or we can dance, or we can make a song with music, with an instrument. Anything around us can be an instrument. So these are all just different ways to really help cope with and kind of manage these feelings of anxiety and stress, and especially when we get really overwhelmed. So the next slide. Okay. And so finally, creating a self-care plan. So self-care is the idea that we have to take care of ourselves. It is what it sounds like. So in order to, if we're feeling like we're in a good spot with our mental health, or we get to a point where we've worked hard and we think, okay, I'm doing better now, we want to maintain that. We want to stay healthy. So we need to have a plan for that. We need to come up with a plan for what can I do to keep my mental health going well. So one suggestion we have is to keep it SMART. So SMART, there's SMART. So the S stands for specific. So you want to be very specific about what you will do to maintain your mental health. So you can go back to the other slide that we had. You can look at the different areas of your life. Look at your physical health, your social health, your spiritual health, your emotional health. Pick any areas that you want to focus on for yourself. And then you look at that, you write that down, and you look at, okay, what is one specific thing that I can do for my physical health? I can go on a walk. Okay, so measurable. How will I measure that walk? I will go on one walk per day, for down to the corner or down to the neighbor's house or something. I'm going to say I will go on one walk this far, this many times. And you want to make sure that this is achievable, that you can do this. You don't want to say, I'm going to go run, 10 kilometers like every day for the next month. That's probably not going to happen if you don't run. So you want it to be achievable, very simple, and then very relevant. You want to make sure that that is something for you that you care about and that will help your health. So going on a walk for me, that would be very helpful. And then you want it to be time bound. So I'm going to start this tomorrow. So you can go through each of those categories, and then you can pick something very specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. On the other side, so things that you can also include under each of those categories. So signs that you're struggling. So let's think about like your emotional health. So signs you have that you are you're starting to feel anxious, you're starting to feel sad. That can be that I stopped talking to people very much. I'm not going outside very much. Then you can write those down so that you know these are signs that I need help, that I'm not doing very well. I need to do more things. And then identify current needs in different areas. So like I said, that's the different categories. So you want to identify, what do I need to do in each of these different areas of my life? Write down the names of people that you trust and who you can actually talk to. And write down some coping skills to use. Write down if I can do deep breathing, or if I can do journaling, or if I just like listening to music, or if I can go on a walk. You can also write down safe places that you can go. So if there is a friend's house or a neighbor's house, or if you can go to school or you can go somewhere safe that feels comfortable for you. And then identify, again, very specifically, when will I access support and how will I do that? So if I am struggling, when will I reach out and how will I do that? I will call so-and-so. I will do this or that. Okay.
So there are,
all.
yeah, so there are some questions. We said we want to finish the meeting at right now at 10 a.m. Nepal time. There are some questions that people ask me that I'm just gonna, if you need to leave, you can leave. But there are some questions that you ask me that I want to ask Alyssa to be able to answer you. If not, we email you back and I'll make a long email and I answer your questions in the email. But the question number one was, I'm feeling alone. Even when I'm with others, I feel alone and I feel empty. What should I do?
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's important that you recognize that. I think that it can be, you want to see, who you have access to. You can start, if you have a doctor, you can talk to your doctor, but you can also, when you talk to other people, try to start to tell them what you're feeling if you trust them. And like I said earlier, so ask yourself, try to write down what are things that you really love to do. If right now you feel like I don't like doing anything, I don't enjoy anything, try to think back to what you used to enjoy doing. What did you used to love that you don't do right now? And then try to do something that you love to do. So when we do things that we like or that feel good, we're going to feel better. So you can start with that and see what happens with your mood. Once you start doing something that you like, you're typically going to start to feel better.
Mm-hmm. Great. Another question was that someone asked her husband have anxiety and she doesn't know when would be the good time to start medication or not to start medication. What can she do?
So that's going to be a question for a doctor. And you're going to want to talk to a doctor. When you're trying to find a doctor, you want to, if you can, you want to find someone that you are comfortable with and that you trust. It can be really helpful when you're preparing for an appointment with someone to write down your questions before you go to the appointment. It can be very easy to get worried, to forget what you're going to ask. And so if it's for your husband who has anxiety, if you can go with him to the doctor or have him write down his questions and then go through everything with them. And because there are also different kinds of medications. So generally speaking, if the anxiety is getting in the way of your ability to do things that you need to do, if it's making it hard to go to work, if it's affecting your relationships, if it's affecting your day-to-day life, that's usually a sign that it's time to talk to somebody and see, what's going on here and what can we do to help.
Right. Next question is about normalizing mental health and getting regular checkups because it's a stigma and a lot of people don't want to go to a psychologist or a therapist. How they can improve that or how they can encourage the families of the students or other teachers to go see a therapist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a very hard one. It can be very, very scary and very lonely to be the people making change. And that's what you would be doing here. You're going to be the ones making changes right now it depends. You do what you're comfortable with, but some ways are, if you go to therapy yourself, you can start to share that with people if you feel comfortable doing that by modeling, saying, I have talked to people, or I have, not even that, just normalizing the conversation by saying things like, I have struggled with my mental health, or I have hard times sometimes. That opens up the conversation. It starts to make it normal. When we say normalizes, that's what that means. It makes it so it feels a lot more normal.
Mm-hmm.
People are very scared to say something's going on with me because they think it's only me. They're going to think I'm crazy. But if they know, hey, you're my teacher or you're this person that I respect and you have struggled, maybe that means for me, it's okay if I struggle too. Maybe that can be okay. And that can be a huge part of starting that conversation. But it is very hard. It could take a long time. So it's also important to kind of use your supports for you as well. Talk with different friends who are also working on trying to normalize this and have these conversations, whether it's with your families, with your colleagues, or with your students, and social media online. That's showing up a lot there more. But I think choosing different areas of your life that you want to do this, and it's totally up to you, but those are some different ways.
Thank you. Next question is, some of the parents of the students don't know about the negative impacts of using the phone, technology, social media, computers to like for the student, too much usage of technology. How the teachers can help the parents understand the negative impacts of technology for students.
Mm-hmm. That's also hard. It's very new. So I think that that's a big challenge is there's research is now coming out showing how negatively this affects learning, how negatively this affects mental health. But of course, none of us here grew up, none of us were children with access to a phone. We didn't grow up in a world with smartphones. This is very new. So it is, again, it's also very hard to get people to understand, but you can start with facts. You can find facts online about just the direct relationship with mental health issues, but you also want to talk about those mental health issues in a way that the parents in your community are going to understand. If I say this is going to cause depression and anxiety, but you live in a community where they don't talk about depression and anxiety, then what you can talk about instead are maybe the behaviors. So you can talk about how this increases isolation, which is like this makes students stay away from their friends. It makes people more alone. This can make people not want to be like engaged in their community. So you can look at the ways that look at like the impacts to day-to-day life and see if that can connect a little bit more, especially since you're going to have that challenge of parents just not knowing a lot about mental health, many parents not believing in mental health, and maybe just not even understanding it.
Great, thank you so much. And this is the last question. So if you have more questions, which I'm seeing more questions here, please send me an email. I'm going to send all the questions together to Alyssa to answer, and then I reply back to all of you. Bea, can you write my email and your email in the chat box so everybody can ask us the questions? All right, so this is the last question. What is the age, the right age for the students to start sexual relationships so that it doesn't negatively impact their mental health?
I don't know if I can answer that. I mean, that's a complicated question. I think generally speaking, so people are not, our brains are not developed fully until we're into adulthood. So when you think about developing sexual relationships and things like that, you know, someone who is a lot younger is not going to understand a lot of consequences of their behaviors, especially long-term effects that can come with a sexual relationship. So it does depend on the person, but generally speaking, that is something to really explore with doctors to see like kind of more current research on like what is the best kind of way to navigate these conversations. And I think that in large part, it's a lot of that. It's a lot about opening up the conversation to talk about those things because it's a difficult conversation to have, especially for teachers and for parents. But it's really important that regardless of whatever age that starts, that there is space for people to for the students to ask questions, to get actual facts and information about sexual health, because that will guide their decisions, regardless of their brain development. But yeah, that's more of I think, a doctor kind of a question.
Yeah, so because we said the workshop is just 1 hour, we didn't have enough time to answer the rest of the questions. As I've mentioned, kind of we can answer some of these questions or the ones that they need maybe different kind of a doctor to answer the questions. I'll also refer these questions to somebody else. If there is more, please send me an email. My email is in the chat box. You can also send it to Bea and she can forward it to me. But I really want to appreciate all of you. I know it's your Saturday morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's so great to see you, all your faces, happy and early Saturday morning. I really appreciate it. We have a list of all the people who participated today. So this will be a credit towards your participation as a part of the workshop. There is 5 more Saturdays that you need to participate to be able to get the certificate. So the next workshop is Saturday, January 18. It's a month from now. Okay. So I want to get your feedback on today's session. Please send me an email and tell me how was today's session for you, what you got out of it, how we can improve the sessions, and how we can make this better for you. Okay? I really appreciate you. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for being here tonight. I know your kids are waiting there for you, but you set a time aside for us, so I really appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful Saturday, and I'll see you next month. Thank you so much.
Hello, Sarah, ma'am.
Hi,
Hello.
Jasmine.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you, ma'am?
Very good.
Yeah,
Thank you. Good to see you.
ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. Just one person is with me, Manisha. She's also from Ahana.
Uh-huh.
So she also will continue she will attend your classes, ma'am. So I would like to introduce her to you. So
Yes,
she may join the next class also. Manisha, are you there?
yes, I can see
Yes,
her.
ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, good morning.
Good to meet you,
Good
Anisha.
morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Let me just give
Yes.
a second. I want to stop the recording before. So, okay, let me just give me a second. Okay. All right.
Yes. So she's Manisha, and she will be continue your attend. She will attend your
Great.
classes.
Good
So
to meet
yes.
you. Thank you for being here. Thank you everyone for being here. Do I have Manisha's email? Did she type her email in the chat box? Yes.
Yeah.
Can you write her email for us?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Sarah, ma'am.
All right. Have a great Saturday. I'll see you next month. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Have a great Saturday. Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Hmm.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye, everyone.